to the Thought Snob podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. It's rare, almost unheard of, for someone to work in the corporate banking world, completely switch gears, and become a psychic healer. When I heard that my guest today, Heather Bryant, had done that, I had to have her on the show. My interview with her is absolutely fascinating, and I promise you that no one has a story like hers. Heather and I talked for so long that our interview was broken into 2 podcast episodes. This is part 1. You'll see what I'm talking about and why our conversation went into overtime, because she channels messages from her spirit guides throughout our entire conversation. You'll learn all about Heather in just a moment, but here's a little background information for you. Heather is a former Fortune 100 banking executive who stood up against overt racism and corruption, which cost her a successful 15-year career in banking. Now, you'll find out all about what she went through in this episode, but this job nearly destroyed her health. After she exited the banking world, she was visited by 2 light beings who spoke to her for over 3.5 hours. Shortly after, she began receiving psychic downloads for strangers in public and channeling. I think the most fascinating part of her story is that she hadn't believed in the spirit realms or anything that existed beyond this life here on this planet until the 2 light beings visited her. Today, Heather uses her gifts to help people worldwide align to their mission and purpose, understand their soul contracts, and the life blueprint their soul created for them before incarnating, so that they can step into their mission and help to create the new earth paradigm. You can book a session with Heather at www.heatherjbryant.com. Your story is it's incredible. And I'm always telling people to get out of a toxic work environment. And I don't know if the majority, if people really realize how damaging that is to stay in a toxic work environment, and they stay in it and it steals their soul and they end up just living a really miserable life. And when I was in a toxic work environment, I was sick all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really, really drawn to your story. And for those who are listening, you were in the corporate world, top of your game, rocking and rolling, running shit. And the company became very toxic. It took a turn, and you couldn't stand it anymore. So let's just start there, because I want people to understand how you stumbled across this line of work, which is the total opposite of being in the corporate banking world. And this, everything I talk about is non-traditional ways of living and out of the ordinary ways of thinking. Why don't we start with when you decided you'd had enough with that job?
I was there for over 15 years. I was a vice president at the time. I had been recruited for all the jobs I'd had for my whole career. And looking back now, I know that it's not banking. I was in mortgage for a lot of my career, but it's not banking or mortgage that I was passionate about. My skill set is really in connecting with people. And now I know I have a gift, but connecting with people and transforming territories and teams. So I had been recruited over to manage about 15 banking centers in Oregon, in Portland. And they were the lowest performing market in the country. And that's what they used to do, is recruit me to take over the lowest performing territories and markets and call centers. And I'm a studier, so I like to, it takes me a while for me to go in and study and see what's going on. They gave me a list of people to fire. They're like, here's all the things that need to be done. And I always say, well, hold on, let me just go in and see what's going on. And I realized that it was the treatment of people. They were treating people absolutely horribly, and that their sales goals were not in line with the opportunity. and I just saw a lot of corruption. So the person that recruited me over there, he ended up leaving about a year after he recruited me. And the people that replaced him immediately came in and started swinging the hammer. And they were targeting minorities, and they wanted us as market leaders to fire minorities. And they're coming up with every excuse in the book to make it happen. And they would tell us that their numbers weren't there, or they needed to be put on performance plans. And they didn't realize, people always underestimate me. They didn't realize that I can slice and dice reports like nobody else. I've been in the company for a very long time. And this is how I, was able to identify what needed to be changed, is looking at reporting and seeing what was going on and meeting the people. And I saw these people were performing. In fact, they were performing very well. And I could tell it was a very just specifically racist request. So they also wanted us to push certain products that increased the bank's bottom line, basically the amount of money that my bosses and their bosses were making. So the products that were increasing their bonuses, they wanted us to push, like checking accounts and credit cards. And my team was over goal. They're always over goal with everything. And they were over goal, but they were still having us push to more product for them to sell more credit cards and checking accounts. So they were having us get on these calls once a week where we would get yelled at and told awful things, basically intimidation and bullying, to make us scared to push more products. And I was standing up and saying, no, this isn't right. We're over goal, and I was standing up for everybody around me too, all of the other market managers. And they were asking us to send emails to our employees to bully them into, selling more products. And I was saying no. So I was the only one standing up against this. And I'm a warrior. I'm here for people. I'm here for equality and community. And I was saying, hey, guys, there's ways we can increase performance across the board without doing what you're asking to do. I've done this my whole career. Let me show you how to do it. And they were threatened by that. So I started getting bullied to the point where I had a stroke and in my 30s. And at that point, things were so bad because I was the only one standing up against this. And all of my peers were saying, well, we don't want to lose our jobs, so we're just going to do what they're asking us to do. And so I, 5 years ago, in August of 2019, I was laying in bed and I didn't know, I had always questioned if there was anything out there. And I was laying in bed and on a Sunday, depressed, just really, really dreading going to work the next day. And I said out loud, if there's anything out there that can help me, if anybody out there can hear me, anybody at all, I need help. And literally things started moving, and some very cosmic things started happening, but I didn't know what it was at first. And 3 months later, they let me go. And they told me I was a phenomenal employee, that I was thanking me for my service. They didn't give me any reason for letting me go. And they offered me $100,000 to stay silent about everything that I knew. And I ended up not taking the money, and I was guided to expose it. So that's the next part of my story. But wow. Yeah, so standing up against it cost me my job. But I always say that it was the biggest miracle I could have ever imagined. And I'll just say too, for like a year leading up to that, I was trying to get out. I was applying for other jobs, and I hadn't applied for jobs, and I couldn't even remember because I was recruited for everything, and I could not. Doors were closing. And now I know it's because the universe lined up the most beautiful, miraculous way out, where I was able to expose what happened. And the story still helps people today. So I always tell people, if you need help, call out for help, because help is there. But our guides and angels can't interfere with the law of non-intervention or the law of free will. So we have to call for help in order to get it.
I love that. So now let's get into talking about the devil's work, because you were raised the exact same way that I was. And I was always so curious, because I just instinctively knew, even as a child, that what I was being taught in the church and in the Bible could not possibly be true, Heather. It was such a fearful existence as a child. And the thought of being thrown into a lake of fire because I didn't dress a certain way or I didn't look a certain way just did not seem right to me. And my conditioning trickled down from my grandfather, who was a holiness preacher. Mm-hmm. And I don't discount anything, because I think that's a huge sign of ignorance, is to say, black or white, all right? But I feel pretty confident that the holiness denomination is way off base with how life works, who God actually is, and when you really get to know God, there's nothing fearful about God. It's not this man that dishes out all of these punishments if you don't behave appropriately. And I started questioning all this as a child, and believed in out of the norm things like reincarnation, paranormal activity, channeling. I was intrigued by psychics, astrology, and the way that I was raised and the things I was taught to believe. My beliefs were the opposite of that. And I wholeheartedly believe that there's more out there than what anyone could possibly imagine. And so this is where you come in. I want you to talk about what happened after you had that conversation with the divine and left the corporate world and applied for all of those jobs and didn't get them, doors shutting. And now let's talk about what you're doing now.
Oh man. Well, I can relate. I grew up in religion also, the fear, and it just doesn't sit with me. There's a white man with a beard that sits in the sky and sends you to hell or heaven, and you have to, he judges you by your deeds. Didn't sit with me either, which is why 5 years ago when I had to be pushed to the brink of, I was on my knees. It brought me to my knees. I had been hospitalized with a stroke from the trauma. So
right.
When I called out, is there anything out there? If there's anything out there that can hear me, I didn't know. I didn't know. So
you did not believe in any of this.
I feel like I knew there was a God. I knew there was something, but they don't teach you in church how to have a relationship with that something. It's more about a hierarchy structure. They teach the hierarchy structure. It's a shame and guilt and punishment. So I thought I did question in my life: does God exist? Does God exist? And something inside of me said there was something, but it was not what I had been told. It's not what I had been taught. So I just didn't know, because I was not, I had never been made aware of psychics or anything. I didn't know any of that stuff. I had never run up against anyone like that, or read any books or heard anything about psychics or channels or oracles or anything like that. So all I knew was that there were some religions, Catholicism, Christianity. I'd heard of Buddhism, but it was very, very isolated growing up. And it's their way or the highway, So that's all I knew. So when I called out for help, the first thing that happened is I started seeing angel numbers everywhere, and I didn't know what they were. So I saw specifically 555 all the time on my clock, on license plates, on addresses, on receipts. And after about 2 weeks, I was seeing 555 and palindromes, and I didn't know what that was either. And palindromes are something that can be read the same backwards and forwards. So like Bob, 1 2 3 2 1. So I was seeing palindromes and 555 everywhere. And after about 2 weeks, I thought, I'm going to look this up and see what this is. This is really bizarre. And there was a divine message there. And the 555 meant, it means, at the time when I looked it up, what the message that came to me was, basically hold on to your hats, get ready, because your life's about to change. And I was like, what? And then I was let go. So synchronicity happens. This is how God, the universe, works. Is about a month after I was let go, an email pops into my inbox from someone that I had known from a long time ago. I didn't really, I had been around her a handful of times, but she was calling herself a psychic. And I was like, what does that mean? And I just got this nudge to reach out and book a session with her. So I did. And I never heard of this stuff before, didn't know what this was. Booked a session. We did it in my car. I was sitting somewhere. We did it in my car. And I came home that night, and I go into my house to go cook dinner, and I go to pour a glass of wine. I look at the wine bottle. I go over to pour a glass of wine, and I heard clear as day, like the Truman Show. I heard, "Do not drink tonight." And I thought, what is that? But it was surprising, but also not. There was this I don't know. It was so bizarre. Nobody was with me.
It was
and
audible.
it wasn't in my mind.
Audible. Like
it was audible.
Okay.
It was audible. It was like speaking into my space. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like if you were sitting with earphones on and someone pulled up one of the earphones and spoke into your ear, and you're like, whoa, and you get pulled out of whatever you're doing. And it was just really, really bizarre. So I said, okay. So about an hour later, I'm cooking dinner and I turn around to grab something and I see the bottle of wine there again. And I think, oh, a glass of wine sounds really good while I'm cooking dinner. And again, the voice said, don't drink tonight. And I'm like, what? So I go to bed that night and I'm laying in bed. I'm kind of an insomniac. So I was laying in bed wide awake. About 11:30 at night, I started seeing images in my third eye, and they turned into these two bright light beings that just started speaking to me. And I'm gonna start crying because it's overwhelming. They started speaking to me, and they showed me Earth. They shared all kinds of things, and they spoke to me for 3.5 hours. And at some point, I took out my phone and started taking notes because it was just so much information coming through. That these beings are the ones that told me that I'm here to expose the corruption, and they told me what to do. They actually told me to, at that point, I had an article written about me and my experience in the Oregonian, and they told me to print out 100 copies and take them downtown, and there would be a person sitting outside of this certain place, give them $100 and ask them to pass it out. So they had very specific things that I did. And the next day I went downtown to go follow the direction of these light beings. So it's something I've never experienced before, but there was this knowing and there was this feeling of complete bliss, something that I've never felt here, in this life. It was just this complete bliss, love feeling. And the next day when I went downtown to follow the directions of these light beings, I felt these two giant beings next to me. And I believe they were my angels. They felt about 15 feet tall, and they were just with me the whole day. And then about a little while later, I was having dinner with my husband out, and I look over at somebody sitting at another table, and all of a sudden I get this download of information about them, and I know everything about them. I know what they're experiencing, I know what they're going through. And I went up to the person and I said, I'm very gregarious, and I said, you can tell me to leave, if you want to, but this just happened. Are these things true? And they said, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know. And then that just started happening more and more and more, and it turned into channeling after that. So wild.
Okay. So I want to talk about this for just a moment. First, I do not have the like psychic abilities like to the level that you do. I have zero experience with mediumship or channeling. I can't imagine what that would be like, but the knowing, okay? I get those downloads. I had never thought about it that way until you said download. And I just know. I can't explain it. It's not in every aspect of life. It's people. It's people. And I can look at somebody, sometimes even in a picture, and I just know things. I know that they're upset about something. I know they're hiding something. I know if they're happy in their relationship, if they're not. I just know. And I don't question it or second guess it. The people that I know personally that I have those experiences with, I will sit back and watch the situation unfold to see how accurate my intuition was. It's never wrong. It is never wrong, and it pisses people off. Now, when you realized that you had those gifts, how did your husband take it? Did he understand? Had he been introduced to this world before?
No, it's so wild. In fact, now I know I've had these gifts my whole life, and this is what made me so successful at the bank, is because I just naturally knew people. That's
why you were good at training people.
Yes. Well, at all the things, I would take over the lowest performing teams, and they'd want me to fire all these people, and I would improve them to literally the top 2%. I won trips year after year, high performance awards year after year, literally the lowest performing teams to the top 2% every time. So top 1 or 2 teams. One time I took over like an area ranked 2,100 and something, and I moved them to the, And now I know it's because I was able to feel in and see what does each person need, what are they struggling with, and how can I help them. And then I was a good coach and mentor. But I was using this my whole life. I had just been told when I was younger that it wasn't real. So my growing up, my family didn't believe in me, and so I shut those things down. And this is what I talk a lot about on my channel now, is that children shut these things down. That's what the whole education system is for. I don't know if we're getting into that, but it's to disconnect us and make us not realize that we have these gifts. So
yeah.
Anyways, now I know I've had these gifts, my whole life. The channeling is a next step above. I'm channeling these groups of beings now. But with my husband, he was an atheist, and now that he's seen me, he has been with me at least 10 times in the first year or two this was happening. He was with me at least 10 times when I would meet someone for the first time or see a picture of someone and read them in detail. And now he's a believer. He's not an atheist anymore. But to witness it in real time, to witness literally me and him having dinner on our own, and me walking up to a stranger and him witnessing that conversation, and people start crying because it's profound what the information's coming through. He had no choice but to. Thank God he loved me, and he knew me for about 10 years before. So this wasn't just we'd only known each other for a year. That might have been a little weird. So
it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, he believes in me, and he's seen it enough that there's no question. There's not a question if it's real or not.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, because I've been experiencing this a whole lot more here lately, and I've been talking about this with people on social media a lot too. I can sense, I don't know what I should call it. My mood can go from really good to just in like a second. And it's almost like I'm sensing trouble, or I'm sensing a troublesome situation is brewing. Now, I can't always pinpoint what it is, but it always surfaces either hours later or the next day, and I'm trying to figure out how to work through that. Also, and so I can use it to my advantage, I guess is the best way to put it. If I encounter a person that has bad intentions or doesn't like me, I can feel it. And it's that icky feeling, just that icky. And my personality changes around people that aren't a good match for me. I can get very weird and quiet. I'm not myself. It's like my personality steps out or something. Is that something that you have experienced too?
Yes. And also what might be happening for you is it sounds like you're empathic. I could channel this for you and really see what's going on. When I'm channeling, I'm like remote viewing within your body, and I can feel and I can see what's going on. And then also I've got these groups of beings that will come in and just share more information. So it's above and beyond the feeling and tuning in, which those were the gifts I had my whole life. So for you, also what could be happening is it sounds like you're an empath, and you could be picking up on other people's feelings and emotions, and potentially, I don't know what you would call it, but a little bit of a premonition. You might be feeling the energy of something that's coming, but I see this a lot with my clients too that are empaths. You're picking up on the energy of someone or something, and until you learn how to decipher whether it's yours or someone else's, it can really be difficult, because it can overtake you. It'll overtake your life if you're not able to release that energy that's not yours.
It really can, and I've often wondered: is it because I'm an empath? Is it a premonition? What is it? And it's gotten a lot stronger over the past, say, 2 or 3 years than it's ever been. But people like you and I know that when you get connected, the more you connect to your higher self, and the more you're aligned, and the higher your awareness is in your consciousness, then your intuition is sharper. It's stronger. It gets stronger. It's like, to me, that's one of the rewards for all of the self-disciplines that I've practiced to get to where I am today. And I have had an intuitive sense that was natural. I had it as a child, but like you said before, I blocked mine out too. I didn't use it for the longest time, because I was led to believe that what I was saying and what I was doing and what I was feeling, well, it was pretty much hogwash because that's not how things were. And you believe who you're around. I mean, you know how it goes. So you have been using these gifts for about 5 years, about 5 years?
I would say, when the two light beings or angels visited me, it was March of 2020. Mm-hmm. They also told me we were going into lockdown. I didn't know. I mean, they showed me so much stuff. That was March of 2020. So the channeling has been like 4 years. The gifts that you're talking about, like feeling and intuition and having these knowings, those are the things, like you said already, I was using those my whole life, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. But the mm-hmm. channeling specifically about 4 years.
And you've never felt, I've always been so curious about this, you've never felt fearful at all, like when you're channeling?
No.
That is incredible.
I've had people ask me before, like, followers drop comments, how do you know you're channeling light beings? And I've made videos about this, but I know because of how I feel, first of all, and I'm very in tune with my intuition now, and it sounds like you are too, right? Mm-hmm. This is part of what I teach also. I'm very in tune with my intuition and how it feels, but the information that comes through is so loving and so supportive. And after channeling for hundreds and hundreds of people now all over the world, to see them in tears, like with how supportive the information is that's coming through, and the profoundness of what's coming through, and me being shown things that of their childhood that there's no way I would know, and the information that's coming around and the guidance is so encouraging and so supportive. It's undeniable that it's light beings. So it's positive spirit light beings. There's several groups of beings that I channel. So I've never, ever been scared. The only time that I feel fear around anything like this is if I see somebody else on social media posting what they're channeling, or the psychic quote unquote downloads they're getting, and I can feel that they're not channeling the light. I can tell that they've either been hijacked or they're channeling through their ego, and so they're being taken advantage of. But I've never felt that for myself. It's always been very, very pure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And on social media, I often wonder, because and maybe I'm wrong. Like, tell me, Paula, you are so wrong if I am. I just don't feel like that everybody on every corner has the type of gifts and talents that you do. And there are a lot of people on social media that claim to. And I'm just not buying it. I see so many people, I could even almost feel that they aren't authentic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is a new world for me. So it's really only been, I'm going to be honest, so I was guided to get on TikTok in January of 2022, mm-hmm. and I didn't do it for about 9 or 10 months. And I finally did. And now I'm much more trusting now, and I take action on the downloads I'm getting. But I've really only been in this world and seen other people with these gifts for the last year. So this is new for me. And I didn't realize that there were so many people claiming to have these gifts, or who have these gifts, but might not be, they might not be connecting to the light, mm-hmm. So I'm still learning. I'm still realizing that there's a lot of, I don't necessarily would call them frauds. I don't know that they know that they're not channeling the light.
That's a good way to look at it. That's probably it. Because I'm sure there's a huge difference I can tell in this day and time when a message is coming to me, if it's rooted in ego or if it's rooted in love, which would be my intuition, ego, being fear. I can tell the difference between the two. I'm not so sure that everybody can. I'm talking about the majority. I'm pretty sure that most people can't really tell the difference. And it's like when you got that, I've never received an audible message, but like when you got that audible message, don't drink tonight. Okay? You felt something that knew that didn't come from ego. And right. It's a knowing. It's a very distinctive feeling. But I'd say you're probably right. I bet that's it, because there are a lot of people on social media these days claiming to have these types of gifts. And maybe it's just because, and maybe they do. I don't know. I've just been curious.
Yeah, so I'm a studier. This is also what made me successful at the bank. And like I was saying, I can slice and dice reports. I like to study data. Mm-hmm. So when I'm channeling, it's a joint. I'm directing, but they're in control. But I also like to direct, and it's like a mutual thing because I like to have as much data and information as possible. So I might be shown something. And I don't think it's good enough. I want more detail, so I'll push for more detail. But so it's like a joint effort. So what I've noticed from that studying and the facts and the data, I was very masculine minded, and now I'm combining this very, very feminine, channeling. So it's been a very interesting combination. But what seems to be happening from what I see on social media is, I think a lot of it is ego based. Like sometimes I'll see people commenting on other people's videos or even sometimes on my videos, arguing with the information that the channel or psychic is sharing. And what I've been shown from my perspective is that whatever downloads or intuitive hits or whatever it is, or you might call it, some people are channeling, whatever information you're getting, if you're pulling it through the ego, it's going to be tainted. It's going to have an opinion attached. It's going to have a bias, and the information is never like that I'm pulling in. So I think a lot of people, without realizing it, they're pulling it through their ego. And I'm being reminded right now, one of the big things that's happening right now in the political climate is that I'm seeing people that I truly believe are psychics and channels taking a very polarized viewpoint or side with the political aspect, right? Red or blue. And what I've been shown is that this is a man-made construct. If you're a channel or a psychic and you're taking a very polarized side or viewpoint, then you're kind of missing the point. And the point is that was created in order to divide us. So there's ego there, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about ego like somebody's full of themselves. I'm talking about our mind is getting in the way of channeling pure information. So I just think a lot of what it seems like is it's people don't realize they're channeling through their ego. And I do see sometimes that people have been kind of hijacked and taken over. And I can tell, in fact, I will even feel fear as I'm listening to them share a message. There's a couple of big psychics that I see on social media sharing messages, and I can feel the lower vibration in it. So I don't think they realize that they're being used by non-light beings that don't have the best intention to channel through them. So I think that the key is to get really familiar with yourself and understand what it feels like when you are getting pure information versus not. And that's going to come through knowing your body, knowing what that feels like in your body. And if you're not in tune with that, then you can't discern the information that's coming through, is what I've seen. That's just my opinion to this point.
Yeah. And that's an informed opinion that makes a lot of sense to me. And now the hijacking, this is a new concept. I don't know anything about that. So what do you mean when you say that you can sense that someone's been hijacked?
So again, this is new for me, still. So
sure.
So I'm learning more and more and more that I'm working with specific groups of beings. One of the groups are the Arcturians, and I didn't know about any of this 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, none of it. So I'm working with several groups of beings. One of them I know are the Arcturians. And they are here to help us with our ascension. They're here to help us collapse all these systems and build the new earth. They're here to help us raise our consciousness and start creating love and unity and community. So there's beings that I would call light beings that are here for our ascension. That's how I explain it. Mm-hmm. And then there are beings who don't want to see us ascend, or there are beings who have their own potentially nefarious desires, or they have some selfish needs that they're trying to get met. And so as a channel, a human being on planet Earth, as I'm channeling these messages from beings, there are people who are channeling beings that don't have good intentions for humans, or who are not of the light. So I don't know if they're lower vibrational. I don't know if they're lower dimensionally. I don't know. And believe me, I've studied because I'm very interesting and I'm very curious about this. So, so there are some specific people I see on TikTok sharing fear-based messages, warnings, fear. And I can tell that they're not channeling light beings because the messages coming through are not love-based. They're not They're not encouraging. They're not encouraging love and unity and compassion. They're instilling fear. And I'll say they're reminding me of this right now, that what they've shown me, what I've been taught, is that we create a reality based on what we envision and what we believe combined with our emotions, which is why the media has always been fear-based. And I've never watched the news. It was up on all day growing up in my home, and I never watched it. It never felt right to me. And now I know it's because they are trying to put out there what they want us to create, because we're the ones that create it as a collective, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when they're putting those things out there, we're then creating it because it's now in our mind, wars or hurting each other or whatever it is, right?
It destroys our subconscious as kids.
100%, right? And then we grow up and we become adults of those kids, right? So I see some of these psychics or channels sharing these fear-based messages and warnings of things. And when you think about it from the perspective of we create a reality with how we envision and what we believe in our emotions, then if these messages are being put out there, fear-based messages, then we're envisioning it, and now we're creating it. So that's how I know that these are not light beings that are sharing these messages, right?
Right.
The people that I become friends with. So I'm gregarious again, and I get nudges from my teams to reach out to certain people on TikTok, and I have a handful now of psychics and channels that I'm in contact with and friends with, and the messages that they put out are so love-based. They're so encouraging. They're so supportive. It's similar information that I'm channeling, and I'm told that I'm creating like a network. So moving into New Earth or into next year as we create the New Earth. So that's kind of how I can determine if personally if somebody is channeling, if they're being hijacked by beings that don't mean well, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. So you did a beautiful job explaining all of that. Makes total sense. I hadn't even thought about it that way before, but that's why I talk to people like you, because I'm super curious about all of this. And like you, I'm always researching and always studying and always looking for answers, because I know that nothing is black and white. I mean, there's a big old world out there, and we're connected to something absolutely grand. And there was something that I was told as a child and, on through the years. I was told, well, God expects us to do the impossible. He expects us to believe in something that we can't see. Well, I can see it. God is in us. I mean, every time that I look at myself, I mean, I'm looking at God. I'm looking at you, looking at a piece of that immaculate divine energy. Take a look outside. There's evidence everywhere of this divine energy that all of us can tap into at any time. And I love the fact that you were at your absolute wit's end. You knew you didn't feel well. You knew something else was out there for you, and you made that life-changing question. You asked that life-changing question. For people who are watching, who are in similar situations, or maybe they just need help with something on a lower level or whatever it may be, is there a way, in your opinion, a right or a wrong way to communicate with the divine? Or am I referring to it the right way? Or spiritual counsel or spirit guides? Or is there a right or wrong way to communicate or to ask these questions when we need help?
Really good question. So I call my higher power my higher self. So my understanding from what I've learned is source, God, creator, universe, the all, whatever you want to call that source where we all come from, that's infinite. And we are all fractals of that. So our souls are fractals of that. And our soul is now having a human experience, right? We've chosen to come and have an experience for many, many reasons.
Right.
So our higher self has created a life blueprint. This is what I do. So it's created soul contracts and a life blueprint for us to accomplish what we came to accomplish, okay, for lack of shortening this. So our higher self is pure. That's the feeling that I had 4.5 years ago when the light beings visited me. It's the feeling beyond this. It's only love. Only love exists. There's no fiery hell. If you believe that that's true, then you might experience that for a little bit until you remember that that isn't real, because we create our reality. But we create this life blueprint before we come. So our higher self has that vantage point, and it's in the love realm. It's in, it's close to source. So to connect with your higher self, what I've learned is that when you're in a high vibration of love and joy and compassion and unity and authenticity, you can discern your higher self guidance. Source, God, you can discern spirit's guidance when you're in a high vibration. This is why everything in our world is geared to bring us in a low vibration. Because when we're low, what they've shown me over and over and over is when we're operating from fear or anger or vindication or wanting judgment or projection, then we literally cannot discern a higher self guidance. That's why from the time we come out of the womb and we get into the education system, it's all about going external for answers, going external for approval, and then the fear-based education system and the grading system and the punishment system and religion. This has all been created to keep us in a low vibration because then we cannot discern. So I always share with people who want to receive guidance from, their higher self to align to their highest timeline and experience more abundance and joy. Raise your vibration, turn off the media, turn off Hollywood, get out in nature, take salt baths, ground, hug a tree, literally. They're breathing beings. They're here to help us. Get out in nature. And once you dance to high vibe music, laugh, play, be around loved ones, set boundaries with things and people that are, bringing you down. And you will start to hear, not only discern your higher self guidance, but you'll start to notice the synchronicities that are happening all the time to guide you to your higher timeline. So that's how you start aligning to where you're meant to go and what you're meant to be doing versus staying in a low vibration and then getting hijacked by the system and perpetuating more of the fear and anger and the hate and the judgment and all of that.
I experience synchronicity all the time, and I almost feel sorry for people who don't, because I look at that as absolute tangible evidence from the universe. And I have seen number sequences, but I didn't see those until I became more aligned with my higher self and was getting connected and cleaning out all the garbage in my subconscious and setting boundaries with people and actually saying yes to what I wanted. That's when I started experiencing synchronicity, and it knocked me off my feet. And that's how it comes in. I had to touch on that for just a moment because you mentioned 555 earlier. And anytime that I have, I've switched jobs a lot, a lot. And I'm a risk taker. You got to take risk or you're never really going to do a whole lot. And so I have left a lot of careers, started new careers, new businesses. Every single time that I was about to take a risk and I was being pushed, that feeling, that push, that you just keep going. You don't know why. You just keep going. I've seen 333 and 555 in those instances. And then I always see the one sequence. It's just like it's just kind of with me all the time. And I just want people to be completely informed about that and embrace it. I have a lot of people tell me on social media that they're afraid. They see number sequences and they get very scared. And I'm like, oh, no. This is a good thing. Don't be afraid. Oh, my God. Just be thankful that you see them. And it's never a bad thing. So I just wanted to speak on that for a moment because the number sequence came up and then you mentioned synchronicity, and I want to talk about soul contracts, and then we can absolutely go to town on K through 12 education system. So soul contracts. All right, I am 47, and I had a reading with this psychic. God, I don't know whatever happened to her, but she was great. Her name was Jessica Goodman. And I remember I was a college student. I was in my 20s, and I had a phone call with her. And I remember sitting on a bench on campus and put my big heavy book bag down and having this call with Jessica Goodman. And she told me that we have 4 soul contracts in our lifetime, and that I had chosen to do 2 bad ones and then 2 good ones. And so that the first half of my life was going to be really freaking hard. And then the second half was going to be easy street. Okay. The way that my life has panned out so far, it appears as though she might have been onto something with that. Is that how soul contracts work? Is that pretty close, or is it a little different with you?
Well, that was probably her understanding from what she's seen. I think everybody explains it differently, So from my perspective, what I've seen, this seems to be what I'm here to do. They seem to bring people to me. I say they, the universe, God, source, creator, spirit guides seem to be bringing people to me, like majority of my clients, to understand their soul contracts and life blueprint, to understand why they're here. People want to know why they're here, what they're meant to be doing. I have clients that are doctors and lawyers and teachers. And a lot of my clients are getting ready. They are stepping into the next phase of why they're here. They're taking the wisdom of what they've learned in their life, and now they're going to be applying it to creating the new earth, really, which is why I'm creating this membership community for New Earth leaders. So
we got to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to share. Mm-hmm. So what I've seen from soul contracts is we create, this is from what I've seen, my opinion from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. We create soul contracts with people and experiences and even trauma. Now, I don't look at it as she might be compartmentalizing things. I'd be really interested to talk to her about what she's seen. But I look at it as people, experiences, and trauma that we have soul contracts with. And those soul contracts help us stay aligned to our life blueprint that we create for ourselves. And our life blueprint and soul contracts help us to meet the right people, have the right experiences, even trauma, so that we can do what we came to do, which is sometimes closing karmic loops, helping other people with their soul contracts, and what they're here to do, evolve our soul. I've seen a lot of people have soul contracts that help them to understand and explore certain themes like forgiveness, setting boundaries, self-worth, and self-love are big ones. And we create, it starts in childhood. So our childhood is, how I word it is, we create the conditions required for us to learn what we came to do, evolve, explore, etc., starting in childhood. So if you had a childhood where you weren't really seen or heard, and you didn't really believe in yourself, or really you didn't really learn self-love, or you weren't really shown love, there's a good chance that you have a soul contract. One of your soul contracts is to learn self-love. And that could be because of things that you've done in past lives and you're exploring the other side of those things. But usually what I see, this is the other side of it that it happens, that I've seen every time, is that whatever conditions that you created for yourself in childhood to learn certain things, it's not just for yourself and your own evolvement, it's so that you can learn something so that you can get back to the collective. So if you're learning self-worth, a lot of people who have like soul contracts to learn self-worth or self-love, they are here to learn that and then teach other people how to do that. Maybe working with children, maybe working with people who have come out of abusive situations, etc. And in order to teach people something, so if you're going to be someone who's going to teach someone about self-worth or self-love, etc., then you can only teach it once you've learned it. You can't teach something that you haven't learned, right? So right. You're going to teach something that you've learned, which is going to mean that you've had to go through it yourself, which means it's going to be painful. So soul contracts can be many different things. And I've seen, when I've channeled for people before and they want to know their soul contracts with their children or their partners, there's many with them. Sometimes people will have soul contracts with their children to help them step into what they're meant to do, to help them experience different sides of things because of past lives, to help them acclimate to Earth. Sometimes I see people who their souls haven't been here very often and they're acclimating to Earth. So a partner or a mother and child, for instance, can have a dozen soul contracts. And you could have soul contracts with people that come in for a moment and leave. So if you have soul contracts to learn self-worth, then your higher self will send in the people and the experiences to interact with, and it will continue to come into your life until you've learned that lesson. And once you start to learn self-worth, those things don't come into your life anymore. The people who are here to challenge that, to make you feel bad, quote unquote, in order to learn self-worth, those things will stop coming into your life once you start learning the lesson. So for me, soul contracts, I see that people have many.
It's not as cut and dry.
Not
Yeah.
from what I've seen, but
That
that's
makes
also
sense.
what I think I'm here to do. Just like some people are here to, work with animals or work with children. And I believe that I'm here to help create the new earth by pulling in new earth leaders through helping them understand what their soul contracts are. So I've had a lot of experience channeling soul contracts, so this is just from my experience, from what I've seen.
So I don't want to put you on the spot. And if you don't want to do this, it's totally okay. But I'm so open to all of this. For the people who are watching and listening right now, and if they weren't like super curious, they wouldn't be tuned in. Could I give you like an example from my life, and you tell me about the soul contract that might be associated with that? Is that something we can do just on the fly?
We could try. How it works for me is that typically I spend a few minutes up front with somebody, hearing what it is that they want to accomplish. And my guides will nudge me and have me ask specific questions because of the law of non-intervention, the law of free will. So they will have me ask the question. And once the person answers, they can now address it. And then once I have like a good chunk of information, I go into my channel, I put on a blindfold and I go in and I just let them start bringing me visions, and they will start showing me and weaving together the story of how everything is connected. So we can try and do a quick hit, but my sessions are super deep. They're super detailed and super, super deep.
Yeah.
So,
probably wouldn't
I
be.
just like to give lots of detail.
Yeah, I understand that. So I'll tell you where I'm going with it. And
okay, go ahead.
And we don't have to do a quick hit or anything like that. So I'm always people watching and just really observing the differences in lifestyles. And that's really what led me to who I am today, because my life sucked so bad and I was so miserable. And then I would see other people that weren't, and they were, just loved and had these great relationships and didn't have money problems. And I'm like, why is all this going on with me? If they can be happy, I mean, surely to God, I can. Okay. So the first 3 decades of my life, it was just, and I understand that a lot of it I was creating myself, but it was just really one abusive person after another, and I was raised by a narcissist, and that's not a word I throw around. It's a fact. And then other similar personalities kept coming in. Is that something that was part of a soul contract, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I've wondered, I know that my subconscious beliefs were certainly playing a role with that, but that would be interconnected. The soul contract would be completely interconnected to any subconscious beliefs that a person has, I would think. Because once you learn the lesson and you stop repeating the pattern and you start loving yourself, then your subconscious beliefs have changed.
Right. And from a higher level, your soul has accomplished what it meant to accomplish in that lifetime for that soul contract or that experience. And so there's no need to bring it in. You might have some residual left, I've seen sometimes. And it's almost just like confirming for you, nope, I've made a different choice. I'm no longer going down that path. And then it just starts to trickle off. So
right.
I always tell people, like, for instance, growing up being raised by a narcissist, when I've channeled for clients who've had narcissists in their lives, sometimes they don't even know they're narcissists, and they'll channel and they'll show me that they're a narcissist, but they will even show me why that person became a narcissist. So was it your mother or father?
Father.
Okay, so your father, whatever happened with him in his childhood, created the narcissist. So he might not have
no doubt.
Yeah. So, but you guys have an agreement for him to, because of what his soul came to accomplish and experience, and what your soul came to accomplish and experience, it made sense for you guys to be father and daughter because it was honoring each other's soul. It was helping each other. So you have soul contracts there. So I would imagine potentially, without knowing any more detail right now, I would say that if you were raised by a narcissist, you maybe weren't seen or heard, or you were maybe verbally abused, maybe physically abused. I see this a lot. And then you might have attracted people into your life, relationship-wise, friend-wise, who also dabble in that arena, right? Maybe people who take more than they give, people who challenge you, people who aren't treating you well. Those are all people that you agreed with, your souls, to help create the conditions that you needed in order to learn what you came to learn. Hold on, do you mind? Let me just plug in and see here real quick. Let me look.
Oh, I don't mind at all.
Okay. Yeah. You might have to cut this piece out while I look. Just let me look real quick.
Sure. This concludes episode 1 with Heather Bryant. Tune in next week for episode 2.
The Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope.